I'm not going to try to justify Dany's descent into madness because it was handled horribly during the 8th season. The show creators decided shock value was their highest priority in this final season, and in doing so, sacrificed good writing and pacing. Even though her fall from grace isn't believable, I still think it'll be interesting to look back at her character development to see where Daenerys became the Mad Queen. The whole world knew of her father's undeniable insanity. Funny enough, his character arc is far more interesting and believable without him even appearing in the current storyline. King Aerys Targaryen II had always been a flawed man, but was far from crazy early into his backstory. The only bad thing you can say about him early into his reign was he was far too jealous of others and vain. It took about 13 or 14 years for him to turn into the Mad King that everyone remembers. He never had a good relationship with his sister wife Rhaella, and when she had a lot of trouble during many pregnancies, Aerys grew suspicious and then paranoid. What pushed him over the edge was his kidnapping by rebels, 6 years before his death. They held him hostage for 6 months, where he was treated roughly. Tywin was his hand of the king at the time, and his plans to save the king would have resulted in his death. Tywin openly said that his heir Rhaegar would make a better king anyways. While Aerys was safely freed, but changed forever. He brought over Varys from Essos to be his spymaster because he couldn't trust his hand or even his son. But all of Varys' whispering in his ear made it worse. He started becoming obsessed with wildfire and torturing. It took his newly appointed Kingsguard member Jaime Lannister to put an end to him before he destroyed all of King's Landing with wildfire. So a 13-year descent, as opposed to Daenerys's, week? It's hard to tell how much time passes in the show. Then there's the argument that a high percentage of Targaryens are just born mad because of their long history of incestuous marriages. But if you look closely at their family tree, that's not really true. There's only a couple who are unquestionably insane from birth. I'll link a video I made explaining all the Targaryens believed to be mad at the end of this video. Her brother Viserys' mental state is a little complicated. He definitely had anger issues, which made him violent with his little sister, and he was also foolish and naive. But he also dealt with a lot of trauma throughout his childhood. What Barristan Selmy tells Daenerys in the books is a huge exaggeration. He says, the Targaryens have always danced too close to madness. King Jaehaerys once told me that madness and greatness are two sides of the same coin. Every time a Targaryen is born, the gods toss a coin in the air, and the world holds its breath to see how it'll land. This makes Daenerys very concerned about her mental stability in the books, but she reacts very differently in the show.
I'm not my father.
No, your Christ. Thank the gods.
Season 5 is where the writers began dropping hints about her descent into madness. This is also where Game of Thrones takes a notable nosedive in quality. Barristan pleads with Dany to show mercy to the former slave masters of Meereen, but right after his death, she feeds one of them to her dragons. Her first sign of cruelty was she previously had been very empathetic and kind. Her short return with the Dothraki didn't seem to change her, and throughout all of Season 7, she was intent on peacefully taking the Iron Throne. And then she loses one of her quote-unquote children, Viserion, during her first encounter with the White Walkers. This would have been the perfect time for a slight change in character, but that isn't the case.
I wish we'd never gone.
I don't. If we hadn't gone, I wouldn't have seen. You have to see it to know.
I know it was Drogon that she was bonded with, but her reaction to his death was so strange, and when the Night King took him for his own ride, she had no issues fighting what she called her child. Seeing a zombie version of your own child trying to kill you should mess with your head a little, wouldn't you think? And then a few days later, she loses Rhaegal and her best friend Missandei. In the very next episode is where we see the visibly changed Dany. This is the appearance of a crazy lady. Just like her father when he was pushed over the edge, their hair was untamed to make it visibly clear. But it wasn't the loss of yet another child or the closest person to her that troubled her. What affected Daenerys the most was Jon Snow. The people of Westeros not loving her as much as Jon broke her down mentally. She wasn't getting that Misa treatment, so freaked out like a spoiled brat. Finding out Jon was actually the rightful heir to the Targaryen dynasty made her character do a 180.
I saw the way they looked at you. I know that look. So many people have looked at me that way, but never here. Never on this side of the sea.
I told you I don't want it.
It doesn't matter what you want.
She was no longer the girl that wanted to end evil tyranny. All she wanted was to be praised and adored. She was convinced Jon would betray her and take what was his. She was being completely unreasonable by asking to keep the truth about his parentage from the Stark kids, who he believed were his siblings this whole time. Jon rightfully shared this information with them. Out of frustration, she destroyed the biggest city in Westeros. If she couldn't have their love, she would have their fear. Her defense to killing innocent men, women, and children was Cersei used them against her, which doesn't make any sense considering the battle was over. The Golden Company got annihilated, and the Lannister soldiers laid down their swords. If they paced her transition into the Mad Queen more realistically, that dumb scene would have been more believable. Why would the same character who fought to save the world just 2 episodes back take countless innocent lives? For shock value. Well, the writers got what they wanted, even though disappointment came along with it. A surrender didn't satisfy Dany's power trip. She had to level the capital her ancestors ironically built. This new evil Dany gave her ominous victory speech, proclaiming she would go and conquer the entire world. Well, Jon made sure that didn't happen. If you overlook the fact that the finale had some of the worst conclusions to many of the story arcs, it was kinda beautiful. The scene where Dany delivers her victory speech looked like it had Disney blockbuster movie money behind it. The art direction and cinematography was the best the series has ever had. It gets even better when Jon approaches the ruined Red Keep, only to be surprised by a snowberry Drogon. Jon stops her from saving the world. The speech she gives him is even creepier than the last.
It's not easy to see something that's never been before. The good world.
How do you know it'll be good?
Because I know what is good.
Emilia Clarke was no longer playing the role of Daenerys. She was acting out something else entirely. A straight-up supervillain who's gone delusional. What took her father over a decade full of traumatic trials, let alone starting off with a weaker mind, took the sweet girl we saw in the first season about a week. And it all comes down to her not being Jon Snow. Like I said earlier, I'll link the video of past Targaryens throughout their 300-year-long history on Westeros who were supposedly mad. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see y'all soon. Thanks for watching.